Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 431. I'm a kind-hearted person in reality. Jun Moxie still stood calmly at this moment. He then turned his expressionless face towards the Silver City's remaining elders and the Seven Swords. Then, he slowly spoke up. The grudges between the Xiao and the Jun family have been settled on this day. Do you have anything to say for it? What can we say? You've killed and crippled every one of them. You've finished the job. And you haven't left any room for negotiation. And now, you're asking us what we have to say? You're so fierce and vicious. And you also have that mysterious powerful person at your back. What can we say? Moreover, we genuinely don't have anything to say about it. So, it seems that the grudges between the Xiao and the Jun family have been dealt with. Anyhow, the Xiao family is the common enemy of the Silver City and the Jun family at this time. How can we say this? This matter is freakishly outlandish. The 10 people looked at each, but none of them opened their mouths. I have dealt with personal grudges now. But I know that the Silver City has lost some reputation because of this matter. And I apologize for that. Jun Moxie's expression was serious as he sighed and spoke. You know that the Silver City has lost reputation. How did you figure that out so early? You made our elder do a striptease. You didn't realize that it would have some negative influence on the Silver City's reputation when you asked him to do that. Xiao Buyu surely spoke of rebellion before he died. But doesn't everyone know that the Xiao family is also a part of the Silver Blizzard City? Then, they heard Jun Moxie change the subject. However, let me clarify one thing. I'm only apologizing because of my aunt, not because of the Silver City itself. This has to be explained properly because we have discovered Xiao family's plot against the Silver City. However, this young master feels that this is a good thing for the Silver City, or at least for your Han family. A good thing is a good thing. But it seems like our magnificent Silver City's influence is falling short in front of our Lord's eldest daughter. Oh, forget about it. We still have some influence at least. As the matter stands, I'm not showing off my achievements here, hee. Everyone has seen today's matters. So, everyone knows that you couldn't have discovered Xiao family's plot if I hadn't used that amazing technique. Hee, it would have become quite a worrisome future for the Silver City if I hadn't done that. However, I'm good a person at heart. I would have never allowed things to go to such extremes. Jun Moxie's voice had changed as he sighed and continued. As the saying goes, which man floating in the rivers of society hasn't been stabbed? Everyone has always acknowledged that sacrificing and saving people is the most meritorious thing in the world. In fact, one instantly achieves nirvana if they do such a deed. They are instantly absolved of all crimes, and achieve a higher and divine status. Nirvana. I'm too good to be true. I did a great service to humanity. I handled things very timely. This is very good. This is excellent. These words left the eyebrows of the men from the Silver Blizzard City twitching and taut. Even the solitary falcon had been struck dumb along with the soldiers in the army. They could have never imagined that this world could have ever given refuge to such a thick-skinned person. He dares to go as far as saying that he's kind-hearted? Isn't he taking things to the extremes now? How could your tongue even endure speaking such things in such a haughty manner? Your face didn't even become red when you spoke these words. Your heart didn't even race at the thought of it. This means that you have reached a new level of shamelessness. In fact, this level of shamelessness would leave anyone to gasp in amazement. how can you call what you did a service? The hatred between the Jun and the Xiao family knows no bounds. But I'm a kind-hearted person. So I still won't spill any unnecessary blood even though we harbor such immense hatred for the Xiao family. I mean what I say. Why else would I spare the life of a man as evil as Xiao Han? Everyone who has witnessed my mercy knows that my words aren't empty. They obviously aren't empty. But what you did wasn't that good a deed. In fact, it would have been better to kill him with your sword. You would have shown him great mercy if you had killed him instead of brutalize him in such a violent manner. You would have been considered a pure being in that case. The Silver City's 7 swords felt their stomachs convulsing. In fact, they felt as if their teeth had started to melt in their bile. Jun Xie bemoaned the state of mankind as he continued. The life which God gives us is virtuous. You see, I wouldn't even have killed the 6th elder if there had been another way of saving the life of the 8th and 9th elders. Furthermore, when it comes to Xiao Buyu's death, I had only made him jump and strip for entertainment. Everyone who saw it felt happy and entertained. In fact, he even got to exercise his aged body. It was a win-win. He was such an old man. He had seen so many things in this world. However, he had no tolerance. And Xiao Fengyu was also killed by the 6th elder. I had only handed his body over to the elder so that he could hold it. After all, they were related by blood. How could I have known that the 6th elder would kill his own great-grandson because he didn't please his eyes anymore? And he did it so quickly. So I didn't even get the time to save the boy. I'm really ashamed. Everyone knows that I'm a very good man with an extremely soft heart. I deal with every problem with my own hand. In fact, I even sweep the floor very careful because I fear hurting a small insect. I even cover my lanterns with cloth because I care for moths. I know that life is important. And that fact is naturally unchanging. Blurg. The solitary falcon turned around and vomited. The soldiers imitated him and started to vomit as well. He's too shameless. He's too disgusting. This is outrageous. Such shameless people are very rare in this world. I only request that you people take those 3 back to the Silver City. It shouldn't be a problem, right? You're anyway going in that direction. Moreover, you can also investigate further into their plans. Jun Moxie ignored the fact that everyone was vomiting and continued with a big smile in a good-natured tone. This is the fate of man. The 7 swords and the 2 elders walked toward Xiao Han and the other 2 crippled men after Jun Moxie spoke this part. It will be great if we can leave this little devil's side as soon as possible. He's too disgusting. Mu Shuatong faced Jun Wuyi and cupped his hands before he left. He wanted to say something, but didn't in the end. It had to be mentioned that the little princess Han Yan Meng had been impatient to leave. She had looked at Jun Moxie earlier, and he looked like a demon to her eyes. The little girl had feared that this demon would have consumed her to her very bones, and wouldn't even have left a drop of blood behind. Moxie. Jun Wuyi's eyes were red. He seemed emotionally moved as he grabbed his nephew's arm and asked, "Was that the truth?" "Was what the truth?" Jun Moxie asked, somewhat puzzled. "The children at the Hall of Hell, are they their children? Are they the children of my brothers?" Jun Wuyi's eyes were glistening with tears, and his voice was hoarse. The blood general could only think of one thing at this time: whether those children were the offspring of his fellow brothers. And he dearly hoped that Jun Moxie would answer his question with a no. That's because Jun Wuyi didn't know how his heart would confront such hatred if it were true. I won't lie about this. It's true for an overwhelming majority of them. Jun Moxie understood the matter. And continued seriously. Don't worry, third uncle. I already reinvestigated them. Their situation is much better than before. Moreover, I've already assigned people to treat them for a quick recovery. Some of them have already recovered to some extent. And I've also requested my master if he could refine some divine medicines which could help them recover faster. Jun Moxie was forced to say this to make Jun Wuyi feel better. Jun Wuyi had always been a man with strong emotions. Therefore, this matter needed to be handled properly. Else, the third master Jun would feel sad whenever he would think of those orphans, even if he was reunited with Han Yanyao. In fact, this matter could even create a rift between Jun Wuyi and Han Yanyao. The two people's feelings for each other were as deep as the ocean, but they would still hold regrets throughout their lives. Such a thing wasn't impossible given Jun Wuyi's nature. In fact, there was every possibility of this becoming a reality. The situation was starting to become better now. So, it would be a huge pity if this matter led to another tragedy. Therefore, Jun Moxie grinded his teeth and made an illusionary promise. He had pushed everything onto his imaginary master. And that would at least give Jun Wuyi hope, even if it couldn't be accomplished. It was something similar to the recovery of his legs. After all, that had also seemed like an illusionary hope at some point in time. Moreover, this thing wasn't necessarily impossible given Jun Moxie's advancement with the Hongjun Pagoda. This is good. This is very good. I'm sure that everything will be fine if the senior is working on it. Jun Wuyi was emotionally moved and couldn't contain himself. His sword-like eyebrows shot up as he continued in a heavy tone. I won't be able to face my brothers of old if I don't take good care of those children. Jun Moxie's heart sank again. Jun Wuyi's state of mind had gone into turmoil ever since he had heard about what had happened to those children because of the hatred between the Jun and the Xiao family. This isn't a good sign. Those little ones and I still look up to you, third uncle, Jun Moxie reminded him. Jun Wuyi became teary-eyed, and his expression became complicated as he looked at his nephew. Then, he laughed loudly and patted Jun Moxie's shoulder. However, he didn't say a word and walked away with his own thoughts. Jun Wuyi cut as a very lonely figure from behind as he walked away. In fact, he looked very desolate. One could tell that this matter would gnaw at his mind forever. Jun Moxie could only sigh. The officers and soldiers turned back and returned as the bugle started to echo. They had done so without a single word from Jun Wuyi's mouth. Solitary Falcon looked at Jun Moxie and approached him slowly. Jun Moxie, this method of yours is shocking and impetuous. Your strength is good, but you've revealed it somewhat early. The solitary falcon had already become accustomed to thinking things over from the Jun family's point of view. Is it too early? Jun Moxie looked at him in an amused manner. The matter between you and Guan Qing will create a huge disturbance once it comes out. But you've come out with such a world-shaking revelation at this time. How won't it create any controversy? You're technically at Sky Xian level, but your fighting strength has already reached that of a spirit Xian expert. But you haven't even reached the pinnacle of the realm yet. So, this isn't enough to inspire awe in everyone. The solitary falcon frowned as he returned his look. And you care about it? Jun Moxie tilted his head, and the corners of his mouth curled into his customary evil sneer. I've done this to make those rotten old bastards ponder over it properly. Humph. I want them to consider this carefully. Which of their families can survive my wrath if the Silver City's Xiao family can't? Jun Moxie's eyes shone with a baleful look as he continued seriously. I've done this once. So, I can do it 15 times more. The power of the imperial families, their ethics and morality, it has never been worth anything in my eyes. They can go and take a hike. Jun Moxie roared in a lowered voice. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 432. My name is Mei Xue Yan. The third Master Jun had been relieved of his deep hatred since their animosity with the Silver City had been sorted out. However, he had then heard about that inconceivable secret. And his lively, vigorous, and bright appearance had again dimmed as a result. In fact, it was like a thick layer of impossible to rid of dark mist had started to haunt his aura. But the third Master Jun was still the supreme commander of the army. So, he adjusted his emotions before he returned to the army. This battle had left the army disorganized. Therefore, he would need to reorganize the army as soon as possible if they wanted to get on with their journey in a timely manner. The solitary falcon and young Master Jun didn't return to the army right away. The solitary falcon had made great use of the opportunity of getting to fight with the 7 swords. They surely joined hands against him. However, they had only helped him in practicing and perfecting his skills. They weren't genuinely a match for this battle-craving maniac. However, this fight had yielded great benefits to him in any case. The solitary falcon had been forced to face the combined strength of the 7 swords and Xiao Buyu in the end. And that had surely left him in a desperate situation where he had suffered some minor losses. However, the overall benefits of this battle had far exceeded the losses. Therefore, the solitary falcon went his usual way once everything had finished. And he decided that he might as well meditate on the spot to recuperate. Moreover, it was also help him imbibe the insights he had gained from the battle. The young master had done the same. It had been around half a year since he had come to this world. He had fought many times in the past as well. But none of those fights could be considered a proper battle. However, this fight with Xiao Buyu could genuinely be considered as a battle of life and death. The fight may have looked simple from the outset, but it had held an entirely different meaning for Jun Moxie in reality. After all, he had fused most of the techniques from his previous life with the ones he had learned in this life. The solitary falcon had started to meditate and imbibe his gains. The army also required some time to reorganize. Thus, the young master also sat down for a moment. Some time had passed when an order was issued from behind. The camp had been set up since it was already late in the evening. The meditations of the young master and solitary falcon had also come to an end by now. Please wait. What would we do if you also leave? Jun Moxie and solitary falcon had gotten up to return when they heard a delicate and shy voice address them. The 2 men were stunned as they turned around. They seemed to recall that there were 2 other women in the tea house where the people from the Silver Blizzard City were resting. Moreover, these 2 women had been in the middle of some dispute with the Xiao family when the army had arrived. The young master and solitary falcon looked up when they heard this voice. And they couldn't help but stare blankly at what they saw. A green-clad girl stood not too far from the 2 men. She seemed a bit nervous. Her small hands were strenuously twisting and twinning at the hem of her robe. Her dark-skinned face didn't stand out much. Only her eyes shone brightly like a full moon. In fact, they were rather pleasant to look at. However, there was nothing special about her apart from her eyes. In fact, she'd even seemed somewhat ugly to some eyes. Jun Xie was aware that he had never seen that woman before. But he couldn't tell why she still felt somewhat familiar to him. He had the mind of a top-notch hitman. In fact, he was the king of killers of his generations. Therefore, Jun Xie would never overlook a matter even if he had the slightest of misgivings in his heart. He pondered carefully for a moment. And a silhouette flitted across his mind with a flash of divine light. It was the Snake King's figure. However, he couldn't tell why the silhouette of the Snake King faintly resembled that of the girl who stood in front of him. In fact, this was extremely outlandish. The solitary falcon was also going through the same thing, and he was also thinking of the Snake King. The two men couldn't help but look at each other. And they saw the same incredulous expression in each other's eyes. They had seen the Snake King in the battlefield outside the southern Heaven City. She had worn a green dress and had flaunted a seductive figure. But her face had appeared beautiful and charming. Moreover, her movements had been invulnerable and strong. Even her expression had reflected arrogance and dominance. The Snake King's demeanor was that of someone as strong as a great master in the human parlance. So, how could this insignificant countryside maiden compare to her? Who are you? Why are you here? Jun Xie looked at her rather suspiciously. The young Master Jun had already overruled the idea that this girl could be the Snake King. But those two women were alone in this area. And this point was enough to keep him on guard. My elder sister and I are from Tianxiang. We had come out with our guards to get some medicinal ingredients. But we hadn't expected that we would encounter so many beasts like we did a few days ago. Then, we were unexpectedly separated from our guards. The green-clad girl continued with a pitiful manner. My elder sister and I managed to escape with our lives after suffering untold hardships. But we ran into those repulsive men when we came here. They wanted to snatch us away to be wives in their family. They had even said that they would force us if we don't come on our own accord. They were very frightening. The green-clad girl still sounded as mournful as before. But Jun Xie detected something strange in her tone. Doesn't it feel like she finds it funny or disdainful? You arrived at the most critical time. Those evil people were fended off, thanks to your arrival. You're a savior for us sisters, the green-clothed girl continued in a melodious voice. You're the young hero who saves a lone young lady from the ruffians. A story about such circumstances is extremely moving. Heir. So, you're saying that the Xiao youngster wanted to kidnap you and make you his wife? Jun Xie was stunned as he looked at the dark-skinned girl's face. He then coughed a bit and said, "This Xiao family's way of doing things is exceptionally different. It's very uncommon." "Not me. My elder sister. Her." The green-clad girl replied in a shy manner. However, she had nearly let out her Xian strength and exposed her identity. I will kill this repulsive snob in one move. I will teach him a lesson even if I don't kill him in the end. Ah, no wonder. Hee hee. I only meant to say that this Xiao family's brat has met beautiful women. Beggars can be choosers. What I mean is, I'm not saying that you're ugly. Jun Xie smiled. The Snake King was graced with a delicate and beautiful body. However, she was extremely enraged at young Master Jun's words. In fact, she was left to tremble in rage. This explanation is more annoying than no explanation at all. It's not a lie that this brat is the #1 debauchee in Tianxiang. I finally get why elder sister doesn't like him. She had previously considered him to be a caring and righteous man. In fact, she had believed him to be a man of importance. Therefore, she had harbored a decent opinion of him in her mind. But that good impression was swept away from her mind when she saw him judge her appearance in that manner. In fact, she almost broke her silver fangs in anger. One of the beast kings from the Tianfa forest had been brought to the verge of tears due to excessive rage. Jun Moxie secretly observed her reaction. He figured that the Snake King would have either become mad, or wouldn't have cared about his lowly words. However, she would have never become teary-eyed like this girl. This was the behavior of a normal girl. The Snake King was one of the senior-most beast kings of Tianfa. However, she had still taken the appearance of a 20-year-old girl. Therefore, everything of hers would become like that of a human after she had changed her appearance. Jun Moxie obviously wasn't aware of this fact. Moreover, her intelligence was normally far superior to that of a regular person. But the Green Hunter's present temperament was that of an 18 or 19-year-old girl. Therefore, the degree to which she could endure wouldn't necessarily be much greater than a girl of the said age unless she were to use her true powers. This was one of the main differences between the level 9 peak Xian beast and the true Xian beast kings. This was one of the reasons why some level 9 peak Xian beasts were only Xian beasts and some level 9 peak Xian beasts had become Xian beast kings. However, which woman doesn't cherish her appearance? The Snake King certainly knew that she had only disguised her appearance at that moment. But her heart was still aggrieved by his words. All men believe that they can entice a princess's love if they get rich. All women are also the same. They hope that a man would discover their inner beauty, and not just remain attracted to them because of their outer beauty. Rich men always want women to come for them, but not for their money. And beautiful women always want men to approach them, but not for their outer beauty. And everyone would always believe that to be true love. But this topic is digression. The beautiful white-clothed girl had been sitting at a distance. However, she suddenly got up and walked over slowly while everyone was talking. Even a man of the solitary falcon's determined power was also dazzled when he looked at the magnificence of the white-clad girl. In fact, it seemed like the bright moon had descended onto the mortal realm. Solitary Falcon stared dumbstruck for a while. He then looked at Jun Moxie. Could this youngster with such less experience in love have ever seen a woman as beautiful as her? He might commit a huge social blunder, or stare dumbstruck at the very least. In fact, it won't be abnormal even if he were to start drooling over her. That chap from the younger generation of the Silver City wanted to make a move to marry this girl. But it's not every surprising given her beauty. Guan Qing Han was an exquisite beauty, but this woman magnificence was unmatched. Dugu Xiao Yi was fresh, pure, and adorable, but this girl was at the peak of the human world. Her beauty was second to none. That white-clothed girl had risen above the rest of the world in that regard. However, things turned out very differently from how the solitary falcon had expected. Jun Moxie appeared tranquil at this moment. It was like he hadn't even looked at this beauty who could bring the downfall of humanity. In fact, she seemed like any ordinary person in his eyes. He was totally indifferent. Moreover, this wasn't an artificial reaction either. After all, deliberate actions would have never resulted in such natural expressions. This brat is abnormal. I see him looking at such a beautiful woman, and he doesn't even blink. Is it because the battle was too strenuous on him? Is he on the verge of dying? The solitary falcon started to mutter mindlessly. However, Jun Moxie wasn't completely indifferent towards her. That girl had come over to thank him. But the young master hadn't sensed a single ounce of gratefulness in her attitude. Instead, he felt a bone-chilling coldness. The beauty of that white-clothed girl was admittedly peerless. But he couldn't tell why she seemingly emanated such an indescribable hostility. She had tried her best to hide it. But Jun Moxie had lived in a state of ambush from all sides in both his lives. So, how could he be caught unaware? This kind of feeling, it feels like I've committed some grave offense against her. Don't tell me that the hatred of some family from my previous life has also passed through to here. It's impossible, isn't it? Moreover, no one should know that I am Jun Xie, even if some hatred has passed over from my previous world. The young Master Jun was genuinely puzzled. The young lady's beauty is heavenly. But what is this sweet lady called? And why has she come here? Jun Moxie searched all over, but he didn't find a trace of Xian's strength in either of the two women. Therefore, he skillfully asked this question. The green-clad girl had already answered that question a moment ago. However, Jun Moxie had repeated the question in order to see if either of those women would make any small mistakes. This young woman's name is Mei Xue Yan. And my younger sister's name is Mei Xue Yan. We thank the young Master Jun for the assistance he has provided to us. The white-clothed woman's face reddened as she answered in a soft voice. It was a coincidence. I had some scores to settle with the Xiao family. So, you could say that I didn't help you on purpose. Therefore, the young lady needn't be so polite. Your name is Mei Xue Yan. That's great. A flower blossoming in the snow. Such a beautiful name can only befit a girl of such beauty. Your younger sister's name is also quite good. Mei Xue Yan. Not bad, not bad. Jun Moxie's eyes widened as he spoke those words. Did he misspell my name to Qian as in no money? A black line spread across the Snake King's face. It seemed that she wanted to bite his face off to let him know which person he had dared to make fun of. It doesn't matter whether the young Master Jun intended to help us or not, the fact remains that he has rescued us. The white-clothed girl spoke up in a harmonious manner. However, she didn't respond to Jun Moxie's jab with regard to her sister's name. The young lady is very polite. How does the young lady know my family name? The young Master Jun asked in reply. Those hoodlums had taken the young master's name during the fight. Also, we sisters obviously know the names of Tianxiang City's famous young masters. The white-clad girl replied in a nonchalant manner. You're also from Tianxiang. We're fellow townsmen in that case. That's great. It seems that we have truly met the Mei young ladies by the hand of fate. The young master looked distracted. This tone is beginning to sound more familiar. The white-clothed girl flashed a secretive smile. Met by fate? You and I have indeed met due to fate. And I will make you regret this fateful meeting for the remaining of your life. The white-clothed girl, Mei Xue Yan, proposed a request as the conversation continued. They wanted to accompany the army back to the Tianxiang city. Jun Moxie's eyes turned as he agreed to their request. However, his heart didn't have any feelings of lust. A beautiful woman is a beautiful woman. However, she will lose her beauty in some years. In fact, would anyone get to see a beautiful face once the night lamp has been extinguished? However, this peerless beauty in white could help me get to Guan Han. It's possible that Guan Han may open up to me again if this beautiful girl makes her nervous. Wouldn't that be great? Moreover, it doesn't matter if these two girls have any other secret motives behind traveling with us. After all, they don't have the slightest trace of Xian's strengths around them. So, what troubles could these two women cause? He gave a quick look to solitary falcon. The great master thought for a moment, and eventually replied with a confident nod. Jun Moxie then became determined. It's still understandable if I don't recognize a great power in this world. But won't it be weird if the great master solitary falcon isn't able to do it either? One has to be as strong as the top 4 great masters if they wish to hide their strength from solitary falcon. Perhaps they'd have to go even further and possess the terrifying strength of Venerable Mei instead. Besides, these 2 young women don't even look 20 years old. But if they truly have the strength to be at par with the great masters, then I will take this old falcon home, and I will eat him alive. Therefore, Jun Moxie invited the 2 sisters Mei Xue Yan and Mei Xue Yan inside the carriage. However, something strange happened in the middle of the night on the very same day. Please subscribe to this channel, so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 433. Guan Qing Han's suspicion. The silence of the night was suddenly broken when debauchee shouted loudly. It even made the not too far away Jun Moxie tremble. So, he ped his robe over his shoulder, and scuttled to examine the cause. And he found out that debauchee's missing pet had unexpectedly and unfathomably returned in the middle of the night. It was important to know that they had covered a distance of over 10 days from the Tianfa forest by now. However, this surprise had driven debauchee mad with happiness. The 2 women got plenty of time to examine Jun Moxie's appearance after they answered his questions. It must be mentioned that the young master had only put on his robe. So, some parts of his body weren't properly covered. In fact, his thigh and legs were nicely looming free of any clothing. And the 2 women were left to scream at the sight of them. Their scream had mostly been derived from the surprise of this situation. However, it also contained some elements of envy. Moreover, there was another strange element, which was rather hard to assess. The time the young master had spent in the Hongjun Pagoda had yielded amazing results when it came to the aspect of his physical transformation. His physical form had become tough. In fact, even a pageant model couldn't have reached this level. It could be said that he wouldn't even have needed to show his handsome face to attract the women on present-day Earth. That physique of his would have been enough to drive the women crazy. However, the degree of his body's transformation had gone a bit overboard. Perhaps it should be said that his extremely fair skin color was a bit dissatisfying. It must be mentioned that it wasn't deathly white. In fact, it was a very healthy shade of white. But it was still somewhat translucent, like snow. And this point had left the 2 beautiful women to feel jealous of him. In fact, the comparatively crazier debauchee had been repeatedly asking Jun Moxie about what he had done to make his skin so smooth and glossy. And this had obviously made the young master very gloomy. A beautiful woman is exclaiming over the skin of a man. Should feel happy or sad? The young master had arrived here in haste after he had heard debauchee's scream. So, he had only been able to cover himself with his robe. His upper body was better off. However, the area below the knees was left open to prying eyes. Still, how could the 2 women not cry out after they had answered his impatient questions? However, that room had a total of 4 women inside it. So, why had there only been 2 screams? That was because only Guan Qing Han and the little girl had screamed. Mei Xue Yan and Mei Xue Yan had unexpectedly fainted, and hadn't regained consciousness since. However, Little White had become much better behaved since he had returned. There was a time when he would straightaway pounce at young Master Jun the moment he'd see him. However, he didn't recklessly rush forward anymore. Instead, he would diligently practice his cultivation. He would often hold a knife in his claws when he'd practice in front of the four women. It was like he was putting on a show, and didn't bother with who was watching him. Dugu Xiaoyi's little imp seemed to be calling out its grievances. It seemed that he had finally become sensible, and had matured and grown up. He ought to look for a wife soon. The little girl stopped teasing her Xian beast. She merely sighed faintly. It was obvious that she had understood these hints. Guan Qing Han also sighed after her. It was unclear whether this was a chain reaction, but even Mei Xue Yan sighed after them. The white-clothed girl was the only one who didn't sigh. However, she did cough softly. They continued with their journey the next day. In fact, they even picked up pace. Jun Moxie had become suspicious when Little White had returned. But then, he thought about the prospect of a Xian beast king traveling all the way to return the little beast, and this notion obviously seemed ridiculous to him. So, he dismissed it with a laugh. Maybe there's some kind of telepathy between Xiao Yi and this little thing. Moreover, this beast's tracking capabilities are good enough to scare anyone. So, this matter isn't very surprising. Jun Moxie had tried to engage Mei Xue Yan in conversations along the journey. He only wanted to use this as a pretext to get some reaction from Guan Qing Han. He. You will ignore me? Look how I am still doing fine without you. Or, you could hurry up and join me. I'm waiting for you between the bedsheets. We'll make love again. We'll keep intertwining like the wind and rain. And that blissful spring will come back again. Hurry up and come to me. However, Mei Xue Yan's reaction towards Jun Moxie was what people call someone greater than the previous foe. Young Lady Guan was cold. However, there was now an iceberg atop an iceberg. Young Lady Mei always stayed aloof. She didn't speak much, and always frowned. She would get impatient very quickly, and would show him the door at once. In fact, her attitude would even make Guan Qing Han freeze. Guan Qing Han was a cold person at the most. She would only ignore him when the worst would come to worst. But the beautiful Mei Xue Yan was the complete opposite. Her word was like the law, and she commanded strict obedience. She could have easily been an empress among empresses. The young master figured that his plan had been laid to waste by young Lady Mei, but he felt that there was still some room for hope. Then, Guan Qing Han finally relented one day. She secretly told Jun Moxie to wait in his tent late at night. She had also mentioned that she had something to say. Jun Moxie's nether regions started to flare up the moment he heard this. The labor of a relentless man pays off. It seems that this girl is still conscious of the situation, and wants to consolidate her position with me. Young Master Jun spent the afternoon looking for a place to wash himself. After that, he wore a silky soft white robe. He even embodied the demeanor of an elegant and graceful youngster. To put it simply, he wanted to appear as tempting as possible. He heard a sharp and cold cough outside his tent as the curtains of night descended. The iceberg has arrived. Jun Moxie felt very proud of himself. He even laughed inside. Then, his voice became aloof as he spoke up in a manly, graceful, and exceptionally steady tone. Please come in. The entrance flap opened, and Jun Moxie's bright and smiling face turned sour. Guan Qing Han had admittedly come over to see him. However, the problem was the person who was behind her. It was Dugu Xiaoyi. And she was also carrying Little White in her arms. Jun Moxie suddenly lost his breath like a deflating balloon. Even a man who had been thinking with his toes instead of the brain would know that Guan Qinghan hadn't come over with the desire he had been hoping for her to have. Jun Moxie had been burning with a fiery passion ever since this meet had been set. However, that fervent flame of desire was met with disappointment in the end. In fact, he felt as if someone had poured ice-cold water into his leather clothing on a snowy day. His entire body felt cold. "We've come to you with a serious matter. Xiao Yi and I were discussing that the two women you are taking back with us have made things complicated. They aren't as simple and ordinary as you had said they were. They don't even talk much. So, why do they wish to join us? This leads me to believe that they have an ulterior motive. Why did you have to be so careless?" Guan Qinghan gave him a cold look. "You decided to give shelter to two unknown women. Don't you know that these are times of trouble? How can you be sure?" Jun Moxie inwardly rolled his eyes. "I obviously know that these women are unknown to us. You don't have to be that serious about it, do you? You two had fallen for me because of my charms. But you started to refuse my advance later on. So, I figured that I could use Mei Xue Yan to pull you closer to me. I felt that you won't be able to refuse me if you sense some competition. It was merely a trick to attract your attention." Moxie, I know that everything has been going smoothly over the past few days. You had gotten rid of numerous powerful experts from the Xiao family the other day. So, you should be pleased with yourself. It's okay to have pride. But you mustn't be overly prideful. Whatever those women have said doesn't make any sense. Haven't you noticed it?" Guan Qinghan scowled as she continued. "It doesn't make any sense. I know that their story isn't entirely true. But I haven't discovered a concrete problem with their story yet. But I'd invite you to enlighten me on this." The young master looked calm as he went to them. "Those two say that they are from Tianxiang City. They said that they are the daughters of a chemist. Moreover, they knew who you were when they requested us to journey together. This doesn't make any sense." Guan Qinghan snorted. "Ha! How does it not make sense? They are from Tianxiang City. So, it's good that they are traveling with us. And there's nothing strange about the fact that they know me. After all, those people from the Xiao family had called out my name many times over. So, it would have been very strange if they didn't know me even after my name had been spoken so many times. Moreover, they had run into trouble with the Xiao family, and I had acted justly by helping them out of their predicament. That's very chivalrous, right?" the young master asked in a puzzled manner. Guan Qinghan was rendered speechless for a time before she finally spoke up. "Don't you know what your reputation is, third young master? Do you have any idea how bad a condition your reputation is in?" These two women would have escaped far away the moment they had heard the name Jun Moxie if they had genuinely hailed from Tianxiang City. Why would they rush into our camp instead? Why would they request to become your travel companions? Isn't that like taking a lamb to the tiger's den? Well, that's also a sensible argument. I didn't think of it that way. Wait, what? Jun Moxie had come to himself and had begun to ponder over it, when suddenly, what does that mean? Is my image so unbearably bad in Tianxiang City? However, these words made the two women giggle. Brother Moxie's image is very good. But it seems that I'm the only one in Tianxiang City who knows of it. Otherwise, Brother Moxie would have left the others to boil with jealousy. Dugu Xiao Yi came over and annoyingly clung onto his arms in a complacent manner. You know your image well enough. And you still want me to explain everything carefully? Wait. Let me think about it, Since when did your reputation start to improve? Guan Qinghan gave him a plain look before she continued. Firstly, they lied. And secondly, they were facing trouble from the Silver City's people when we had arrived. This is the point that I'm worried about more since both sides were standing in confrontation. Focus on the confrontation part. It means that the two women had enough strength to face off against the Silver Blizzard City. And what's more unusual is that those two women have nothing unusual about them. So, what you mean is that they have some powerful expert protecting them from the dark? Jun Moxie frowned. Yes. But neither you nor Solitary Falcon has discovered them. And this is extremely strange. Guan Qinghan was a woman. And a woman is a woman. She had obviously thought everything over in detail. It would have been acceptable if you hadn't been able to discover this hidden expert. But the Solitary Falcon is one of the great masters. So it could be something big if he hasn't been able to figure these people out either. How powerful would that expert be if they are able to hide in such a way? Jun Moxie put his hands behind his back and strolled twice round the tent's interior. So, the expert protecting these two women must be stronger than the Solitary Falcon. That's why they were able to confront the Silver Blizzard City's people. And that's why Solitary Falcon couldn't discover this person. This is the only plausible explanation. Guan Qinghan directly came to her conclusion. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 434. Bone Tempering Pill. Right. Anything else? Jun Moxie nodded. But the establishment of this conclusion leads to another question. Why did they have to come and seek protection in an army camp if they had someone of that strength to guard them? The expert who is guarding them may be very strong. However, we can't forget that this is an army camp. So, their guardian will have to remain hidden even when they enter the camp. This means that their guardian might not have enough time to save them if anyone has any bad intentions. Guan Qinghan exhaled a long breath. So, I'm guessing that they might have some other means to defend themselves. Guan Qinghan knit her delicate brows. And neither you nor Solitary Falcon has discovered what that ability is. And that is extremely strange. Jun Moxie continued to nod. I'm even guessing that this mysterious self-defense ability comes from the two women themselves. Guan Qinghan finally relayed the thoughts that had been concealed in the depths of her mind. This is the only way these puzzling dots can be connected and explained. Guan Qinghan became increasingly shocked as she continued to speak. It could be concluded that these two women are even stronger than the peerless great master Solitary Falcon. This analysis seems reasonable, but it's very unlikely to happen. Jun Moxie nodded heavily. Those two women haven't shown any malice towards us. They've only requested us to take them to Tianxiang City. That's all. And I'm sure that these doubts will be clarified once we get to the city. So, we only need to make some preparations in secret for the time being. I only have these things to speak of. And you're good at making the preparations. So, it's best that I stay with them and keep an eye on them. After all, it's impossible for them to always be flawless with their words and deeds. Guan Qinghan gave a long sigh and stooped up leisurely. Jun Moxie rolled his eyes. The beautiful Guan Qinghan had clearly indicated she was returning to her tent since the conversation had ended. This means that I'm going to be left disappointed, dang. I shouldn't have bathed. Jun Moxie thought gloomily. Jun Moxie became even more dispirited since Guan Qinghan's head didn't even turn as she walked away. He was about to enter the Hongjun Pagoda to train when he raised his head and discovered that Dugu Xiaoyi was still there. Moreover, she was looking at him with wide and round eyes. You haven't left? Is everything okay? Jun Moxie asked with no sense of imperceptivity. Brother Moxie. Dugu Xiaoyi pouted as she exploited the opportunity to come closer. I want to discuss something with you. Is it all right? Jun Moxie's spirit quivered. His body was also left to tremble. Dugu Xiaoyi's coy voice had made every last hair on his body to stand. Don't, ma'am. I'll do whatever you say. I won't have any objections. I promise. It's nothing big. I only wanted to know when you will give me a chance to cook rice again. Dugu Xiaoyi's pretty face had turned red. She was extremely shy, but she had still firmly held on, no matter how this matter appeared. Ha! Cook again? Cook what? Jun Moxie stared wide-eyed. He was certainly thirsting to cook rice at this time. But how could he cook? His thirst for it didn't mean that he was in no position to make choices. And it most certainly didn't mean that he was prepared to be enslaved by that aphrodisiac's effect and ravage her to ruins afterwards. Good lady, please forgive me, have pity on my small weapon. It won't rise again even if it's tossed from side to side. No. There will be no discussion about it. Dugu Xiaoyi raised her neck. What will happen if you two return and secretly go over the rituals? You will become husband and wife after that. Do you want this young girl to be your concubine? I will force myself upon you if you don't agree. Being my concubine. Force yourself upon me. This girl is bold. But she's way ahead of her time. Jun Moxie had been beaten by her. You're still small. You won't be able to deal with that. So, how about we talk this over first? Jun Moxie hadn't merely spoken these words to escape from this situation. Instead, they were hard truths. He was only 17 years old in this life. But he still had the thoughts of an older man from his previous life. Therefore, doing it with a 16-year-old girl was still a crime for him. She's still a kid. Did you say I'm small? How much older are you? You're only 1.5 years older than me. So, how are you too old? Ha! I'm not that small. Dugu Xiaoyi's perky bosom burst forth like raging waves. This nearly gave Jun Moxie a nosebleed. Ah, mother. Is this my fate? And don't worry about what will happen once we return home. Elder sister Mei Xue Yan gave me an idea about that. Dugu Xiaoyi's face blushed as she bit her lips. There will be no problems if we do this. Ha! Jun Moxie scratched his head in confusion. She told me that there won't be any problem as long as I go back with a big belly. It might be a bit strenuous, but we can persevere through the issue in that case. Dugu Xiaoyi's face became a deeper shade of red as she twirled her finger and spoke in a lowered voice. What? Going back with a big belly? That matter regarding strenuous or not reminded Jun Moxie of what had happened earlier. And he was left covered in sweat as a result. That tremendous scandal involving Guan Qing Han hasn't even been pacified yet. And this is likely to create another terrifying storm. And if I make your belly big. Jun Moxie suddenly and quietly disappeared from the tent with a whooshing sound. You won't go. But I can, right? You think I can't hide? Young Master Jun immediately thought of moving into action. And he entered the Hongjun Pagoda. Dugu Xiaoyi bashfully waited for a reply. In fact, Flowers had started to blossom in front of her eyes by now. However, her brother Mei Xue Yan had already vanished. This made that young lady unbearably angry. Jun Moxie. Humph. I'm considered one of the two most beautiful flowers of Tianxiang City. But you're still not ready? Do you know how many guys wish to pluck me? You think you're the only guy around? It was hard to tell where she had learnt this wisecrack from. However, her words were clearly not conforming to her actions. She looked around twice. Then, she walked over to Jun Moxie's bed and sat down. She then felt the bed with her hand and groaned in a loving manner. Then, something flashed in her mind. She quickly grabbed the quilt and dug into it. Thud! Thud! Two small boots flew out from the bedding. You can run. I'll wait for you here. I'll see where you go. I'll surely force myself on you when you come back. I'll give my all for you. Debauchee snorted and groaned a bit. She still felt a little embarrassed. But she let it pass no matter what. Debauchee was wrapped in the bedding, and she was also surrounded by a man's smell. She couldn't help but feel her heart beat loudly. This smell isn't bad. No one else was present there. But she still felt a bit guilty. Debauchee then stealthily looked around to see that no one else was there. And she slipped further inside the bedding once she was certain that no one was watching. She wriggled as she shrugged off her gown. She then lay on her back and rested her head on the pillow as she thought. How do I forcing myself on him? However, Jun Moxie didn't return for a while. She waited for a while longer. But Jun Moxie still didn't come back. Debauchee started to feel sleepy. She tried to fight to keep her eyelids open. However, she yawned twice and, eventually, fell asleep. A first-class sleep is the best way to rest. And this sleep of this little girl could actually be called savory. Meanwhile, Jun Moxie had stepped into the Hongjun Pagoda. He had carefully inspected each of the 9 swords he had forged earlier. And he had put them back after he had pondered over them a bit. After that, he had picked up some fragrant herbs and had started to refine the divine pills. He had received a message from Fatty a few days ago. And this message had stated that their supply of the 2 divine pills had hit rock bottom. These were the main source of their wealth. So, the supply mustn't be stopped. In fact, it was even necessary for him to prepare a reserve stock if possible. Therefore, the young master started to increase his store's capacity. Moreover, he had also concocted divine pills which could increase Xian's strength to a greater extent. However, he could only refine this pill to support the 10 years Dan. The 3rd level of the Hongjun Pagoda had given him the access to refine another kind of pill. This pill could act as a bone-tempering pill. The advantage of such pills was that they could transform a man's bones to become more compact and coordinated. But it didn't provide any other advantage. However, this bone-transforming pill could be combined with the cleansing pills. And that would yield instantaneous results. In fact, it could take a mediocre fighter and could transform him into a martial genius. It didn't matter whether it was his physical strength, his meridians, or his dantian, everything would be transformed. The said individual would be given a new life. However, it was a pity that the cleansing pills could only be refined at the 4th level of the Hongjun Pagoda. Therefore, Jun Moxie could only look up and sigh since he didn't have a better option. And so, he continued to refine the missing yin pill and the mysterious yang pill. Even that bone-tempering pill. Those clumsy ox-like idiots will be better off if their bones are better coordinated, right? However, Jun Moxie hadn't realized that these bone-tempering pills would have more importance in the Xian continent than he had anticipated. In fact, they would be worth much more than the 10 years strength-enhancing pills. The strength-enhancing pills could increase one's cultivation by 10 years. However, those pills would ignore the natural hierarchy in doing so. In other words, they would work against the will of the heavens. It was truly awesome when one comes to think of it. However, this would be a one-off thing even if it managed to increase the cultivation. This meant that it would have no effect after one use alone. But the bone-tempering pills could transform one's basic attributes. They could destroy the bone's original form, and could reassemble them from a scratch. This was something which one couldn't even dare to imagine. Such an enhancement in someone's basic constitution couldn't happen by following a procedural training. However, there were some things which could increase someone's basic constitution in this manner. The Tian Fa forest's sacred fruit was one of those things. However, a pill that could improve someone from the inside was very rare to come by. That was because no legendary potion had ever been able to achieve such a thing. Jun Moxie tossed the tiny jade bottle after he had successfully finished the refining. He then laughed out in a complacent manner. Young Master Jun felt the aura from the Hongjun Pagoda filling his body and replenishing the vigor he had earlier lost. And he smiled in a satisfied manner. The speed of this process had become very astonishing by now. He had continuously been improving his skills for the last few days. He had also been using his turning iron into gold skill very frequently of late. But his ability to replenish his lost energy had also improved a lot. And he had also been rising through the Sky Xian realm as a result. In fact, his strength had already stabilized past the Sky Xian middle rank. One could even say that reaching close to the breakthrough to Spirit Xian wasn't impossible if this speed of improvement continued. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 435. There's no way to survive this day. However, Jun Moxie discovered a little problem. The Hongjun Pagoda's aura was getting thinner. It was important to know that the Hongjun Pagoda had abundant aura inside it. However, Jun Moxie had been absorbing it non-stop because of his training. The aura had currently returned to the same level when he was in Tianxiang City. But Jun Moxie clearly remembered that the aura was much denser when he was in the Tian Fa forest. In fact, the aura wasn't only more profound there, it was much more profound. The young master's strength used to be very shallow some time ago. So, he couldn't distinguish the difference between the qualities of the aura. But his strength had become more profound now. The Hongjun Pagoda surely had abundant supplements of aura. In fact, it was unlikely to run out of it. But it was getting thinner. People tend to become frightened if they don't know much about the ongoing matter. It seemed that the change in environment had some effect on the Hongjun Pagoda. Jun Moxie would absorb a huge amount of aura every time he'd train. And only a small amount of that aura was absorbed by his body. The majority of it would re-enter the Hongjun Pagoda. This aura would be absorbed into his body when needed at a later stage. However, Jun Moxie had also understood one point: the Hongjun Pagoda also needed to replenish its aura. It seemed that he would need to think of a solution to this problem. After all, Jun Moxie was dissatisfied with the speed of his aura's replenishing ever since he had experienced its potential in Tianfa. This change in Jun Moxie's attitude was a very normal aspect of human nature. It was similar to the case of a man who had been with a normal-looking partner. However, This man then got a chance to be with a very beautiful girl instead. This continues for 6 months. Then, the man wants to get married. However, he ends up with a normal-looking partner again. This situation was something similar. This is how men think. And the young master was also a man. So, he was no exception to it either. Jun Moxie gave a satisfied sigh as he stepped out. This had already been a very long night. He had first had those long conversations. Then, he had concocted several pills. And he had practiced his art of unlocking the heavens' fortune after that. Therefore, it could be said that young Master Jun was very tired. Moreover, he had been very excited some time ago. But his hopes had washed out, and nothing had materialized out of it. And this had left Jun Moxie in an unpleasant mood. Will I have to end up forcing myself? Jun Moxie quickly shed his clothes, except for those covering his nether region. He then walked barefoot towards his bed, and slammed into it. But how could the young master have dared to go to sleep after landing into the trap that had been set there for him? Jun Moxie jumped out naked from the bed. Dang! What is this? Jun Moxie had lost his sleepiness. His eyes opened wide as he looked at his bed. His forehead had a dark line. Have I slipped into the wrong bed? He had felt a soft and fragrant body the moment he had gotten into his bed. And this had left him to believe that he was dreaming. This dream is very beautiful. I hope I don't wake up very early from this dream. Young Master Jun slipped away and moved to the entrance. He then looked around in a secretive manner. Yes, this is my tent. So, why is Xiao Yi in my bed? Moreover, she's... Jun Moxie approached his bed once again as these thoughts crossed his mind. He then extended his hand and gave a light push. Hey, wake up. Don't sleep here. Xiao Yi turned over while holding the quilt to her body. And muttered in a haze. Stop being noisy. Let me sleep. Jun Moxie felt his head ache. Both his upper and lower heads were becoming bigger. A single man and a single woman were alone in the same tent in a dark and quiet camp. Faint wisps of delicate fragrance were floating in the air. These were obviously provoking wild and fanciful thoughts. Moreover, this extremely beautiful woman had exposed herself like this under these circumstances. And she was sleeping in his bed as well. Jun Moxie wouldn't have been a man if he hadn't had some reaction to that. Do I do it? Or do I not do it? Jun Moxie pondered on that bewildering question with some nervousness in heart. Xiao Yi turned over on the bed. The meager quilt on her graceful legs half fell down the bed with a soft clinking sound. And an extremely beautiful figure was exposed to Jun Moxie's eyes as a result. Delicate arms, perky chest, slender waist, and slender legs. Jun Moxie's eyes sparkled at the sight of it. And he made a gulping sound as he swallowed some saliva. Feck. Forget about one sheep, this is like 2 sheep. Lust prevailed over logic. And his inner wolf appeared. Something moved inside Jun Moxie's heart. He took 2 steps forward and moved towards the bed. There was a malicious green light in his eyes. He looked similar to a hungry wolf on a cold winter night. Ha! You finally returned? Xiao Yi suddenly woke up. She then looked at Jun Moxie in an excited manner. I've been waiting for you the entire night. Where did you go off to? Jun Moxie's arms were open. He was about to jump and throw himself on her. However, he had stopped in between this movement. So, his posture was rather strange at this time. Well, it's good that you've returned. Xie held her quilt and tilted her head as she looked at Jun Moxie. Her eyes were brimming with curiosity. You look confused. Are you ready or not? Ha! Am I ready? Jun Moxie straightened his back. His small head had been standing tall a while ago. However, it had withered by now. Ah, are you ready to cook rice or not? I'm telling you. I'm ready to force myself upon you today. So, be a good boy. Xie opened her mouth and spoke in a tyrannical manner. She then lowered her head. Her small head had reddened with a blush. She couldn't help but fiddle with her braid. What? What are you going to do? You wait. I'll go and get the medicine. The girl excitedly jumped out of the bed and put on her clothes in a flustered manner. Then, she fled the tent like a wisp of smoke and proceeded to get the medicine. Jun Moxie hit his head against the bed and bounced due to the cushioned collision. He then used the entirety of his strength to hit the bed with his hand with a slam sound. Good God! I've committed the greatest sin of my life. Please let me die. This is a dream. But, aren't nightmares a kind of dream too? Please let me die. Then, there was a bang. And the three Dugu brothers rushed in aggressively. They then started to shout at the Nike Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie. What did you do to our little sister? You little lecher. Young Master Jun silently turned his head to look at them. The young master so depressed that he wasn't even embarrassed anymore. In fact, he was already on the verge of a collapse. The young master suddenly got up and got into the bedding. Then, he shouted from inside it, "Get lost! Or I'll put a baby in your sister." Xie quickly went and procured her medicines. She was panting madly and violently by the time she entered headfirst through the tent's flap. I've got the medicine, Brother Moxie. So, we'll cook rice. Right. Xie was in high spirits. She hadn't even finished speaking when she raised her head and realized that her elder brothers were present. She couldn't prevent herself from feeling flustered. So, she stared wide-eyed. Ha! What are you guys doing here? Jun Moxie dragged Guan Qing early the next day. He ignored her opposition and started to bow and beg her. Guan Qing thought that his wolf-like nature had flared up again. However, she wanted to discuss the matter of the Mei sisters instead. So, she couldn't help but frown at him in a resentful manner. We're at such a critical point. Yet, you only care for your personal needs. There will be a big problem if this senseless man's actions go public. And, everyone will rebuke this young master if that happens. However, the young master continued to beg and whine. I beg you, sister. I beg you, please educate that Xie. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. Please. Guan Qing was stunned by this. A blooming flower in each hand. The young master was surely suffering ruin at this time. However, the Tianxiang city was in complete disorder as well. Jun Moxie hadn't even returned to the Tianxiang city. But, the news of his affair had already caused a cacophony over there. Even the emperor seemed overwrought these days. Jun Moxie's incestuous affair had been suppressed under a huge amount of pressure to prevent it from exploding out in the open. After all, young Master Jun's affair could cause a huge scandal in this extremely conservative and feudal society. The Jun family was obviously trying to push this matter down. Even the Dugu family and the emperor were putting pressure on it. After all, this matter could give rise to a very perilous situation if it were exposed. His Majesty didn't want this scandal to become public because the Jun family had displayed its strength at Tianfa Forest. The emperor was clear about one thing: the consequences of the Jun family being brought down because of this matter would be catastrophic. The government officials mustn't be allowed to use it to attack them either. After all, the Jun family would retaliate if that were to happen. He was certainly the nation's ruler. However, he wouldn't be able to contain the situation if that were to happen. So, one could only imagine the intensity of the issue. The emperor had attempted to cage every information regarding the matter between Jun Moxie and Guan Qinghan. And he had hoped that the big scholars would understand the situation as well. In fact, the emperor was one step away from jumping to the sky and yelling out, "Open your eyes, you dogs. See what's happening. Can you even afford to provoke the Jun family? Even I'm afraid of the consequences." However, things had turned out very contrary to the desired result. His Majesty's good intentions piled many inches thick in memorials. However, they had come to naught. He postponed the court meeting for 10 days because of this matter. The emperor believed that the courtiers would consider the matter carefully. And he felt that they wouldn't create any trouble since they'd realized the severity of the situation. However, His Majesty was left baffled in the imperial court the day it convened again. 9 imperial censors, Mei Xue Yan and Kong Lingyang, and 50 to 60 other government officials teamed up. They comprised for more than half of his imperial officials. However, they had decided to accuse the Jun family of misconduct. They accused Jun Moxie and Jun Wuyi. Moreover, they put special emphasis on Jun Moxie's scandal involving his elder sister-in-law. The emperor felt a stab of pain in his head when this happened. "Your Majesty, I open my heart and accuse the empire's great supreme commander Jun Xie. Jun Xie hasn't educated his grandson properly. And thus, the boy has committed such a scandalous act while traveling back with the blood general. The ruler of each and every nation is condemning this act. This relays the shame my Tian Xiang has to suffer for this crime." Kong Lingyang's face was solemn. His beard had fluttered as he had stood up. Jun Xie is domineering and arrogant. He relies on his power like a spoilt child. And he does whatever he pleases. He disregards the imperial law. And he even threatens to kill the imperial ministers. This is a huge crime. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 436. Which side do you take? A long unending speech followed, wherein the scholar listed no less than 15 crimes that had been committed by the old man Jun. It would go against the natural order of things if Jun Xie wasn't punished for them. In fact, it would be a grave misfortune for the common people. There was one particularly interesting part in the accusations. The specific content was as follows: the soldiers and guards around the capital city's ministers are being threatened by the Jun family. And this has forced the guards to relocate out of fear. It seems that Jun Xie is on the verge of causing an uprising. A total of 15 crimes were listed. And one of them was said to have been committed by the old man Jun's grandson Jun Moxie. That young and shameless brat has defiled his elder sister-in-law. He has committed an immoral act. Guan Qinghan is the eldest daughter-in-law of the Jun family. However, she has seduced the young master with little shame. She has ruined the family values and has lowered their morals very considerably. This charge had 7 accusations in itself. His Majesty frowned as he looked at the old scholar in a very impatient manner. However, Kong Ling Yang seemed very more emotional as he continued in a loud voice. This official believes that Jun Xie is a traitorous scoundrel who is guilty of these crimes. And he should be punished with execution without further delay. Jun Wu has been shamelessly ignoring rules of the military. He should be sacked. And an inquiry should be initiated against him. This man should be sent to prison, and he should be given a very strict punishment. Jun Moxie's crimes against his elder sister-in-law are filthy to the extreme. He should be given death by 1,000 cuts. It shall serve as an example for future offenders. Guan Qing Han isn't a woman who defends her honor. She is extremely shameless. She is a widowed woman. However, she still shared the beddings with another man. Her crimes must be declared publicly. That shall uphold Tian Xiang's moral integrity to the world at large. These words were very poisonous in nature. In fact, they could taint and ruin the Jun family. The donghua family's head grinned. He hadn't heard a single word about the extermination of the entire family. But this punishment was still as cruel. After all 3 members of the Jun family had been nominated to the scaffold. Jun Xie was sitting with a lowered head. However, he didn't seem to be paying attention to anything. In fact, it appeared as if he was sleeping. This official seconds this motion. This official also supports this motion. Everyone in the hall kneeled in front of the emperor and requested him to punish the Jun family. Many people who hailed from the various powerful families hesitated to speak out. So, they merely watched as everything proceeded. However, the emperor's brows continued to knit tighter and tighter together. Your Majesty, I believe that Jun Xie has lost his status of the past. He doesn't hold the same status and authority in the army anymore. It will be good for Tian Xiang if we root out the Jun family by using this opportunity. And it will be good from a morality standpoint as well. Even Jun Xie raised his eyebrows when he heard the voice of this man. I knew that someone would try to get me when I'm down. But I had never thought that he would be the first person to do so. It was the Song family's head. He was also a general in the army. His name was Song Dehai. The Song family's head has spoken correctly. This official seconds this motion. The Meng family's head Meng Yue stood up as well. His face brimmed with grief and indignation. Jun Xie is like a malignant disease for the empire. It will be difficult to keep the rest of the continent calm if we don't remove him. It would be very difficult to maintain the court's discipline if we don't remove him. And it'll be difficult to prevent the common people from speaking about it for ages. So, I sincerely look to His Majesty to resolve this as quickly as possible. We sincerely look to His Majesty to resolve this as quickly as possible, everyone called out together as they firmly prostrated themselves. The 7 great families of the capital were present in attendance. The Murong family had remained neutral as usual. The Tang and the Jun family were still as thick as thieves. So, the Tang family hadn't spoken a word. However, many others stood in opposition to the Jun family. But one family had acted beyond everyone's anticipation. The Li family hadn't participated in this onslaught even though they were the Jun family's greatest rivals. This matter is of utmost importance. We shall discuss this further tomorrow. His Majesty announced in a low voice. The officials may rise. The emperor was about to flee from the court. However, this is when he heard the old scholar Kong speak up again. Your Majesty mustn't leave. Your Majesty mustn't leave. You need to sort this matter out quickly. We can't delay. Anyone who hesitates can't resolve this chaos. Your Majesty is divinely wise. And he knows the military law. Kong Lingyang wasn't prepared to leave. So, he took the lead and started to shout these slogans. His meaning was very clear. We won't give up unless you deal with the Jun family today. The emperor frowned in a serious manner as he got up. However, it seemed as if these words had escaped from deep within him. I'm feeling unwell. So, I'll leave. Then, he waved his sleeves and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. You love to kneel, don't you? I can't believe you've put me in this position. I'm going to lose my mind. Even the emperor wanted to use this opportunity to deal with the Jun family. And anyone who'd peek into his heart would know of it. But he couldn't dare to. He was the ruler of an empire. So, he had obviously thought far ahead than most people would. Perhaps those rotten scholars hadn't considered this point. Perhaps they thought that the consequences of dealing with the Jun family wouldn't be that bad. However, the emperor knew that the Jun family had a comprehensive command and influence over the military. Therefore, he was certain that there would be news of a mutiny in the morning if he were to make a move against the Jun family. In fact, even speaking up against Jun Xie would result in the same. And then, more of such news would pour in from at least 5 or 6 places within 3 days. What would the nation of Tianxiang do then? Is it that easy to deal with the Jun family at this time? What a big joke. Would I have waited for you to submit your petition if I could have dealt with them? The officials also left after the emperor departed in violent anger. Jun Xie had seemed to be sleepy inside the hall. But he was as lively as a dragon when he walked out. He hadn't taken the accusations of those rotten scholars seriously. It would have been a serious matter if the Murong and the Li family had launched an attack as well. But those small fries weren't enough to entice the old man Jun's fighting spirit. Jun Xie, you haven't educated your youngsters, and now your grandson has acted in an evil way. Yet, you dare to show your face in society. Retribution awaits you. Kong Lingyang trembled as he called out. An overwhelming majority of the officials were waiting at the door along with him and Mei Xue Yan. The public opinion was also in their favor. So, they were quite confident. This information was right on the bull's eyes. Therefore, the old scholar Kong was quite certain that he could bring down the Jun family in one swoop. Jun Xie stopped in his tracks and turned to look at him. Then, he snorted and said, "Hey bookworm, can't you shut your beak? This old man is very annoyed. I don't have time to deal with you. We will discuss this matter tomorrow." Kong Lingyang became furious when he heard this. Even his whiskers started to tremble. You. However, Jun Xie merely rolled his eyes, turned, and walked away. One of the officials went closer to Kong Lingyang's ear and said, "Master, this old man Jun is one of the greatest experts of the city. Moreover, he has reached the Sky Xian Peak. So, he's almost as good as the strongest expert in the city. Therefore, I beseech the master to be cautious." Sky Xian Peak? The strongest expert. What's that again? Kong Lingyang raised his eyes and gave a resolute look to his disciple. He then said with disdain, "He merely has martial prowess. What do you have to fear about? There's an ancient saying, words are the law of the land. Strength can only choose sides. Haven't you heard that? The ones with talent decide the fates of empires. Do you understand? How can a mere warrior ascend to the top of an imperial court? It will be extremely hard for him to find excuses or apologize in this situation. He can't justify anything. This matter has already been determined. How can an ordinary man like him be anything in my eyes? That old scholar's philosophy was as follows. So what if you're a sky Xian peak, Jun Zhantian? You would still be a mere warrior even if you were a spirit Xian. And you don't have brains since you're a warrior. So you're useless. It had to be mentioned that this old man had been studying in somewhat of an ivory tower his entire life. Consequently, he had no idea how frightening a sky Xian or spirit Xian could be. Tomorrow. Everyone hadn't come to participate today. But we will deal the fatal blow to the Jun family tomorrow. Kong Ling Yang snorted coldly and continued. I would like to urge all officials within the borders of this nation to get involved. We must form popular public opinion inside the city. I won't allow this filthy moral debauchery to exist. Does this shameless family have the qualifications to stand above the imperial court? Today's momentum wasn't bad. But it still wasn't enough when it comes to the Jun family. The Meng and the Li families' heads need to support this. Kong Ling Yang turned his head. Be at ease, master. The Meng family won't shirk from its duty. Meng Yue thumped his chest in guarantee. And the Jun family isn't very pleasing to the Li family's eyes either. So everything should go smoothly. Ha ha. Everyone laughed as they looked at each other. In a distant place. What do you think of this? The head of Murong family Murong Feng Yun asked Dugu Zonghang. Dugu Wudi stood behind the two in silence. However, his rough beard was twitching again and again. What? Didn't you see that Jun Bastard was just sitting there? He didn't even give a dang. Those annoying scholars only eat till they're about to burst. They have nothing else to do. They're foolish idiots. Dugu Zonghang raised his head with disdain. Jun Zhantian can pinch their balls with his fingers. They won't have anything to cover their asses with if he comes for them by tomorrow. Murong Fengyun frowned in indignation and said, How can you speak like that? You're a head of a family. Can't you be more refined? Refined? Refined. My fart. Your elegant words aren't as good as the hair in crotch. Dugu Zonghang rubbished and spat saliva. I'm a military general. Have you ever seen generals fighting with elegance? It's like a hairball to me. It's my fault that I asked you to be refined. I was gravely mistaken. Murong Fengyun felt endless remorse. But can I ask if you're sure about this onslaught? Jun Zhantian looked calm and collected. But that Kong Ling Yang seems to have a big and sharp momentum. Can that old man Jun stand firm in the face of it? How will he not? I've already said that those rotten scholars won't be able to do it. Dugu Zonghang snorted as he looked disdainfully at the group of officials who had gathered at the side. It would be a huge joke if these scholars could bring down that rascal Jun. In fact, I'll castrate myself with a sword if they succeed by using her accusations. Hell, I'll even wear a skirt. And marry a man. Dang! Murong Fengyun burst out cursing. I won't marry a man. Feck you, old man. Listen, old Murong. I'm asking you whether you will take a side. Or will you sit on the fence again? Dugu Zonghang's wide eyes resembled those of an ox. Sitting safely on the fence is always a good idea. But you're asking me. What do you plan to do? Murong Fengyun's narrowed eyes resembled those of an old fox. Can I ever lack taste and stand in the middle like you do? I'm obviously holding fast with Jun Zhantian. Which idiot would help those foolish and glutinous pieces of dog shits? Dugu Zonghang drew back his huge mouth. Besides, he and I are related by marriage now. Ha! Relatives by marriage. Murong Feng Yun was shocked. When did this happen? Feck it. Don't mention the Dongade thing. My family is very unfortunate. Duke Zongheng got mad at the mention of that topic. He couldn't beat up Murong Feng Yun. So, he turned around to look for his son. But, Duke Zongheng had been very loud a moment ago. Therefore, the very obedient Duge Wudi had turned tail and fled the moment he had heard the mention of that topic. Thus, there was nobody there when the old man turned back. He couldn't help but rain a mountain of curses in anger. Bastard! You wait for me, you little cuckold. You didn't let me vent my anger? I'll beat you up twice as bad once I return. Murong Feng Yun's white eyebrows sank as he frowned. It seemed that he had fallen into deep thought. So, the Jun family and the Duge family have become relatives by marriage because of this matter. This isn't right. In fact, this is big news. It seems that my Murong family will have to reconsider. After all, it's always a good idea to choose a safer side in advance. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 437. Jun Moxie's weakness. Li family. The doddering Grand Preceptor Li Shang was seated on his official armchair. His face was covered in thick wrinkles. The old man's health had been becoming worse with each passing day. You ran. Do you believe that it's time for our family to make our move? Li Shang looked at his grandson. Li Yuran was wearing a white gown. His hair was jet black, and his face looked very handsome. In fact, he had somehow removed the scars that had previously riddled his face. The young Master Li smiled faintly. You're kidding me, grandfather. This isn't an opportune moment for us to make a move against the Jun family. It'd be best for us to stay out of it. Oh. Do you have misgivings when it comes to fighting Jun Zhantian? Li Shang's eyes had a complicated light in them. No. I have no misgivings when it comes to fighting with Jun Zhantian, not even the blood general. Instead, I have misgivings regarding the third young master Jun Moxie. Li Yuran sighed and continued. Jun Zhantian is a fiery character. So, he's obviously difficult to deal with. But, he's a person of noble character. Jun Wu-yi is a military strategist. He wins every battle. But, he is an emotional person. Such people may have divine power, and they may possess unequaled Xian strength. But, we know their weaknesses. So, we can entrap them while staying hidden. After all, wisdom will always win in the contest of power and wisdom. However, that Jun Moxie has left me thoroughly puzzled. Li Yuran lowered his head and flashed a tranquil smile. However, his gaze became incisive as he hesitantly spoke up. I haven't been able to see what kind of a person that Jun Moxie is. I can't sense his weakness either. And this is undoubtedly frightening. I've always been able to see that Jun Moxie's character was riddled weaknesses. And this has been the same since childhood. Each of his weakness was fatal, and would have been the end of the Jun family. But I've come to realize that those weaknesses had merely been a ruse now that I wish to deal with him. It seems like I've overreached myself, and gotten duped as a result. Your analysis is very good. You must have observed that Jun Moxie carefully. Li Shang coughed twice. He had been listening to Li Yuran's words very calmly. Then, he spoke. But, you must understand one thing. It's true that Jun Moxie hasn't exposed a weakness. But, he's still a young man. A young man. What do you mean, grandfather? Li Yuran was somewhat puzzled. A young man may be powerful, and he may be very talented. However, a young man is still full of youth and vigor. So, he's bound to be impulsive. Li Shang chuckled. Jun Xie was able to outdo someone as far-sighted and wise as yourself. That matter hasn't been forgotten until now. And, don't even try to deny this in front of me. And, this is your weakness. Yes. Li Yuran bowed as he listened to his instructions. Second, a young man may be intelligent and calm. But, he's still a mountain of passion. And, that is always a strong weapon against any youngster. Li Shang narrowed his eyes. Jun Moxie has never shown it, but it can be concluded that his biggest weakness is women. He cares for women. Take Guan Qing Han for example, or maybe Dugu Xiao Yi. You're right, grandfather. Li Yuran bowed and agreed cheerfully. Experience does count for a lot. Obviously, you regard your heart as unfeeling and cold. But, you also felt dejected when you were planning to deal with Princess Ling Meng, right? Li Shang's gaze was sharply piercing through his narrowed eyes. Don't even try to tell me that you didn't. Yes. I was, at that time. I was very irascible. Li Yuran calmly admitted. And, the third place where we can attack a young man is his close relatives. Jun Xie and Jun Wu Yi are his close relatives. His father and elder brothers had died long ago. But, he was too young at that time. So, he might not have felt the pain of losing loved ones. But, he's an adult now. So, he can understand everything. Therefore, he will treasure them twice as much. However, it'll be an incalculable blow to Jun Moxie if his remaining relatives were to die at this time. I believe that these are the 3 ways to deal with that unbeatable Jun Moxie of yours. Li Shang warned in an earnest tone. There are no enemies who can't be dealt with. And, there's no man without a weakness. You must remember this important point well. This Yuran will remember the grandfather's advice forever. Li Yuran stood straight. It was evident that he was in awe of the advice he had received. It couldn't be denied that experience does matter. Grand Preceptor Li wasn't a great scholar. He didn't command great military prowess. He didn't even possess unrivaled Xian strength. However, he had always held a spot that could compete with Jun Xie and Dugu Zongheng for the top 3. Jun Moxie and Li Yuran were gifted individuals. And, they had mastered their respective innate talents as well. However, they were still captured by this dismal side of the human nature. And, this made them slightly inferior to these older men. Yuran. These are the 3 weaknesses of Jun Moxie's. However, there is another aspect about Jun Moxie that you must take note of. Li Shang spoke very slowly. Is there another weak point? Li Yuran was obviously quite interested. It may or may not be. But, you must keep it in mind regardless. It will prevent you from making mistakes in the future since this aspect regards to Jun Moxie's nature. The Grand Preceptor Li softly flipped over the thick files of data that were present on the table in front. No less than 3 of them were piled up. They were named Jun Moxie 1, Jun Moxie 2, and Jun Moxie 3. So, it was evident that these were about Jun Moxie. Every move of Jun Moxie's was recorded inside them, everything from the time he ate food, to the time he used the toilet. Moreover, many comments analyzing the reported facts were also mentioned therein. These factors had obviously added to the size of the document. Jun Moxie's conduct? Li Yuran raised his brows. and spoke in a pensive manner. We didn't notice anything strange about Jun Moxie's conduct at first. We had started recording his information 3 months ago. In fact, around 30 of us had discussed the information and recorded it. But I haven't found any weakness of his nature within these detailed reports and analysis. This Li Yuran admires the grandfather and prostrates myself. After all, I had no clue about the weaknesses grandfather pointed out. Li Yuran's smile was undoubtedly one of envy. However, that envious smile also contained a sincere trace of admiration. I've listed those points as Jun Moxie's weaknesses. However, they aren't specific to Jun Moxie. Instead, they are the common weaknesses of all youngsters. Therefore, you must first see if they even apply to him. Also, you must consider the manner in which we should exploit them. And you will need to be very careful about it. Else, we will end up warning the enemy. And we may not get a second chance given Jun Moxie's intelligence. Li Shang coughed. Grandfather mentioned that there was some aspect about Jun Moxie's conduct. But you didn't explain in detail. Your grandson thirsts for your teachings. Li Yuran nodded slightly. His gaze was profound. How do I say this? I've been thinking over Jun Moxie's conduct for a while. In fact, it might not necessarily be his weaknesses either. After all, we may consider it to be his weakness. However, his weakness could also turn to his advantage. The wrinkles on Li Shang's face got deeper. This is very difficult to understand. Even I can't understand it at this time. Therefore, I ask you to look into this seriously. Yuran. Take some time and think about it. You're clearly impressed by Jun Moxie. However, you stand against him. Do you understand his character properly? Jun Moxie is certainly wild and proud. He is arrogant, bombastic, and seems to require everyone's attention. But he does succeed in drawing people's attention very quickly. However, he makes everyone hate him. In fact, he often becomes unbearable. But a persistent person would eventually realize that his actions had gained him many advantages. Li Yuran then pondered and continued, but this man has become extremely unbearable in the past few years. It would be an incredible feat if he had done this on purpose. Moreover, it seems that the change in this man's situation has only started to reflect in the past half a year. This is what I don't understand. How can he change so much in such a short a time? This is incredible and unbelievable. Is it genuinely incomprehensible? Nothing would be difficult to understand if you think of it in simplistic terms. Let's assume that Jun Moxie was a very talented youngster. Yet, he seemed like an unambitious man. In fact, he didn't even seem to wish for anything in the past. He only wanted to live a merry life. Do things make sense if you follow this notion? Li Shang's voice was dull, but his words contained a profound meaning. Li Yuran's eyes sparkled, and he became calm again. He didn't say a word, but he had understood his grandfather's words. It seems that many things will become easier to understand if we establish this point of view. Let's assume that we hadn't decided to deal with the Jun family. It could be said that the Jun family's military strength would have gradually thinned out after the old Jun had died. That's because Jun Moxie wouldn't have taken over the family's responsibilities. After all, it didn't seem like his plan at first. Unfortunately, everything has changed for that man. And he has transformed himself very drastically over the past half a year. Other people may not know about this, but I see that very clearly. Li Shang snorted lightly, Jun Xie had strenuously attempted to secure the Jun family's future about 6 months ago. Therefore, it could be assumed that the Jun family had reached a tipping point. Thus, Jun Moxie had no choice but to change. In fact, that old man Jun had proposed Jun Moxie's marriage to Princess Ling Meng. This was tantamount to telling to Jun Moxie that, "I can't support you anymore. I can only hope to arrange a secure passage for you post my death. After all, I will pass away in time. And you won't last a day once I'm gone." However, the emperor had declined this idea even though he empathized with them. Li Shang heaved a soft sigh. And Jun Moxie underwent a thorough transformation after this event. The emperor's attitude towards his grandfather's helplessness must have induced a change in him. Why would he decline old man Jun's request? It showed that the emperor doesn't want the Jun family to exist in his empire. This must have forced Jun Moxie to expose his frightening hidden talents. In fact, I feel that His Majesty would die of annoyance if he were to realize this. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 438. The Thunderous News from the Southern Heaven. Li Shang's voice was dignified. "Do you understand? You ran?" The pressure which induced this change in Jun Moxie was so great that he had no choice but to change himself. High pressure can sometimes force a change in a person. In fact, even the biggest cowards around can sometimes turn into heroes under pressure. You may have never experienced such pressure. But this change in Jun Moxie is unexpectedly very reasonable. Li Yuran looked pensive as he pondered. Then, he slowly nodded. The Grand Preceptor Li's speculation was somewhat reasonable. But he could have never guessed the real reason. In fact, his conjectures would only continue to deviate and distance from the truth as he'd follow his logic. That's because this Jun Moxie wasn't the same old Jun Moxie. In fact, there was a difference of sky and land between the two. Therefore, the very base of Li Shang's theories were mistaken. Let your grandfather give you another advice regarding Jun Moxie. Don't try to pressure him too much if you don't have full confidence in landing the fatal blow. Li Shang's white eyebrows trembled as he smiled and continued. You and the Li family only wants more power. But Jun Moxie doesn't desire power. In fact, he ignores power. Therefore, Jun Moxie doesn't have a substantive conflict with us. This is why the rivalry between you and Jun Moxie is different from the one between Jun Xie and me. He ignores power. How can you be sure? Li Yuran's eyebrows shot up. Who wouldn't want a high post, a generous salary, and authority over the empire? Who doesn't envy the men who have power over thousands of men? Who isn't fascinated with waking up to the whole world in your hand, and an intoxicating beauty at your knee? Why does Jun Moxie have such an independent and unique character? Why doesn't he want this? He didn't believe it. In fact, he couldn't believe a word of it. This is visible from every action and every move of Jun Moxie's. He doesn't care about anyone's opinion. Moreover, he's unlikely to care about honor or disgrace, or life or death. Thus, he doesn't care about glory or death. He has the ability to spend millions of taels by raising his hand. And he's also capable of living in unlimited luxury by merely smiling his way to wealth. He looks down on all men in the world in the true sense of it. He goes his own way, and does what he pleases. That youngster moves freely, and bodes no restrictions. Li Shang sighed. That's the kind of person he is. His goal is greater than yours. He is better than you. I don't wish to admit this. However, I have no choice but to do it. He's better than me, better than me. Li Yuran slowly went over those words. And suddenly became bitter. I've done my best to pursue what I desire. But, is my effort that dismissive in others' eyes? This was a mocking irony for someone as proud as Li Yuran. Yes. He's better than you. I can see you're ambitious. I can see them very clearly. Li Shang's sparse eyebrows budged lightly. You've sought it your whole life, you want the throne of the world in the palm of your hands. You want to rule over all men, even if it's impossible. This wonderful taste of power is your goal, but it will also be your ruin. In fact, you will sacrifice anything for that wonderful feeling. Yes. Li Yuran's eyebrows moved softly. His eyes were brimming with a bloody and murderous aura. Everyone desires power. And everyone must strive to improve. Emperors can change with time. And my chance can also come someday. And I will unmask my potential if that happens. I will rise up to make my Li family last for 1,000 generations. I seek to establish the Li dynasty the moment I see the chance. However, what Jun Moxie pursues is detached from everything else. He wants to stand beyond imperial power, like the Silver Blizzard City, or the Shui Han Manor, or even something higher. But I don't know what that is. Li Shang sighed. And His Majesty also sees this very clearly. Therefore, he's more tolerant than before. But he's also thoroughly repentant. The imperial preceptor smiled. I can understand His Majesty being repentant when I listen to grandfather's words. But how is he much more tolerant than before? Was he that intolerant in the past? Li Yuran was puzzled. What's the inside story here? The imperial preceptor smiled, but didn't answer that. Instead, he merely said, who knows the reasons and results? Whatever is between our Li and the Jun family is nothing more than a grudge between Jun Zhantian and me. There's no cause for conflict otherwise. And we're getting old. So, what grandfather means is. Li Yuran was somewhat puzzled. My grandfather's tone suggests that he wishes for the deep hatred between our families to be let off even though it has been carried on for 3 generations? Yuran, you must remember this. Dealing with the Jun family means dealing with someone like Jun Moxie. Don't act unless you're sure you'll annihilate him with his entire family. And make sure that you see Jun Moxie's corpse swaying before you with your own eyes. Li Shang closed his eyes. He continued in a somewhat tired manner. That's the only case in which you must make a move. But don't act recklessly if you're not sure of it. Then, that is when we will attack first. Li Yuran bowed his head. His soft hair **ped over his face and covered it. However, his true expression weren't visible to anyone. Li Yuran was shocked inside. What grandfather said right now. And what he had said before. Don't try to pressure him too much unless you have full confidence in landing the fatal blow. These words have the same meaning. However, grandfather emphasized them, and even spoke them twice. What does this mean? Li Yuran had understood it very clearly. This explains grandfather's feelings. He believes that I won't be able to face Jun Moxie's counterattack. Moreover, it'll be the end for our Li family if he counterattacks. However, Li Yuran couldn't accept this point of view. Everything is still your plan. And you should be better than me, no matter the manner in which you act. So, I can't issue my opinions. This family relies on you. So, you do anything as long as you deem it fit. And don't worry about my impressions. Grand Preceptor Li tiredly closed his eyes and waved his hand. You only need to remember two things in the current situation: don't disobey His Majesty. And you must be very careful with Jun Xie. Have full control. Don't provoke these two. And everything should be all right. Then your efforts will surely pay off for our Li family. In fact, they will take us to great heights. Then Grand Preceptor Li became silent, and this conversation between the grandfather and grandson came to an end. It was merely early winters at the moment. But a brazier was still raised inside Li Shang's room. Li Yuran had always felt warm when the brazier was lifted. However, he felt cold this time. And it was because of this conversation. In fact, he felt very cold. This cold feeling left his usually upright figure to curl up shivering. And he couldn't help but lean close to the brazier. The complicated expression on his handsome face revealed that he was in deep thought. After all, he couldn't accept that he would lose. Could I be so much worse than him? I've been trying so hard. But it still hasn't made much of a difference. I haven't had the time to think about this aspect much. But how has Jun Xie already surpassed me by so much? Is he that fierce? Is he so hard to rival? Li Yuran sighed deeply. Li Shang closed his eyes and reclined on his couch. His heart could only sigh as he wondered what his grandson might be thinking. He had obviously understood it clearly. His grandson could depend on him for aid when it came to analyzing the pros and cons. However, Li Yuran could only rely on him when it came down to it. I have a report for the Lord Young Master. The head of the Meng family, Mei Xue, wishes to meet with the Lord Master. A voice reported from outside. Tell him that the Grand Preceptor is unwell and needs to rest. So, the Grand Preceptor can't meet anyone. The young master has gone out and hasn't returned. Li Yuran replied in a weak voice. Mei Xue must have arrived to unite with the Li family so that they could discuss how they should deal with the Jun family. But Li Yuran didn't wish to hear the words Jun. Therefore, everything must wait until the storm of his heart had come to pass. He looked at the 3 files on Jun Xie and smiled bitterly. Then he suddenly picked the sheets and threw them open into the fire of the brazier. The fire roared, and the flames soared inside the room. The temperature inside the room also rose as a result. However, Li Yuran's face was increasingly being filled with frustration. The flame illuminated his face in a deep red color. It was a somewhat strange color. There was a sound of flapping wings in the sky. Then someone informed, Young Master, the report on the army returning from Southern Heaven City is here. Li Yuran tossed the remaining sheets into the brazier. His movements were neither too fast nor too slow. He then dully replied, Come in. Read it aloud. Yes. A big person cautiously entered. He did the usual ritual and opened the letter he held. There was an incident on the 9th day of the army's return march. They were hindered by the Silver Blizzard City's second elder Xiao Buyu. He had 5 other Spirit Xian elders, the 7 swords, and 2 Sky Xian experts along. Furthermore, Xiao Han challenged Jun Wuyi to a deathmatch. Li Shang's eyes suddenly opened wide, and he sat up straight. Li Yuran stopped tossing the papers and became completely still as well. The big man was shocked by this and didn't read any further. Go on. Li Yuran clenched his teeth. Jun Wuyi defeated Xiao Han, and the latter was crippled in the fight. The 7 swords fought the 8 Great Master Solitary Falcon. The Great Master went on to defeat the 7 swords. And Xiao Buyu fought Jun Xie in this battle. Xiao Buyu fought Jun Moxie. Li Yuran trembled as he raised his head to look up at that man. Yes. Xiao Buyu fought Jun Moxie. But he was no match for young Master Jun. Then, Jun Moxie used some evil scheme and made Xiao Buyu strip in public. This shamed him to an extent that he killed himself. Jun Moxie's sword also decapitated Xiao Fengwu. And he also cut the legs of the Silver City's 8th and 9th elders. Moreover, Jun Moxie pierced the 6th elder's chest. Jun Moxie took on 4 of Silver City's spirit Xian experts by the end of it, and he came out on top. Everyone from the Silver Blizzard City. Li Yuran didn't hear whatever was informed after this part since his mind had spiraled into a great shock. His eyes went dark. And only that single piece of information was left to resonate in his mind. Xiao Buyu fought Jun Moxie. But he was no match for young Master Jun. Then, Jun Moxie used some evil scheme and made Xiao Buyu strip in public. This shamed him to an extent that he killed himself. Jun Moxie's sword also decapitated Xiao Fengwu. And he also cut the legs of the Silver City's 8th and 9th elders. Moreover, Jun Moxie pierced the 6th elder's chest. Jun Moxie took on 4 of Silver City's spirit Xian experts by the end of it, and he came out on top. Jun Moxie took on 4 of Silver City's spirit Xian experts, and came out on top. It seemed that his ears had been filled with the sound of a thunderclap. It was like his soul had flown out of his body, and had transcended to the clouds. Li Yuran swayed a bit, and his right hand grasped at something in order to steady himself. The thick pile of papers he held dropped from his hand and landed into the brazier. This stack of paper landed on top of the raging flames inside the brazier. And this gave rise to a plume of thick black smoke. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 439. Shocked to the core. The dimmed and aged eyes of Li Shang also livened up. Nobody moved for a long time. However, a huge cloud of smoke had gathered inside the room. The 3 individuals lifted the curtains after some time and rushed out of the room. A massive plume of smoke soared into the sky. It was presumed as if something had been set ablaze. Consequently, the sound of alarms rang out in the household. And the guards started to arrive with buckets of water. Li Yuran coughed a few times before he returned to normal. However, he continued to watch the rising smoke in silence. Li Shang took the letter which had been delivered by the eagle. He read it very carefully from the start to finish. And his complexion became very serious as a result. Grand Preceptor Li lifted his head after a long time and looked at that dark cloud of black smoke as it hovered above. He let out a very lengthy sigh and muttered, "I tried to overestimate him as much as possible. But I was underestimating him very greatly this entire time. Oh heavens, there's bound to be a change." Li Yuran's expression also became unsightly as he muttered, "He fought 4 spirit Xian experts, fought 4 spirit Xian experts." This usually calm young Master Yuran had suddenly lost his mind. Each powerful family also received this news from their own intelligence networks. The royal family was no exception either. The wordings of their respective letters were slightly different. However, the information contained was virtually the same. Consequently, Tianxiang City witnessed yet another earthquake. It was earth-shattering, world-shaking. In fact, it was something which could turn the world on its head. Jun Moxie has caused an earthquake when that news about his affair with his elder sister-in-law had spread. And These vibrations hadn't even settled yet. In fact, people with ambitions were still trying to spread the flames in order to increase its effect. Consequently, the response to it was also increasing. And the voices of insult were getting increasingly loud. Over half of the people in Tianxiang were waiting for that shameless hoodlum to return so that they could shame him. In fact, they had planned to curse him to death. Moreover, they were certain that they would drown him in their spit if he didn't die from their cursing. Jun Xie's present reputation in the city was even worse than the one that had stained his name before he had come to this world. In fact, it had become synonymous with words like dirty, shameless, contemptible, lowly, and despicable. And the same effect had spread to Guan Han's name due to her relation with him. The talk of this adulterous couple had spread to every corner of the city, whether it was the teahouses or the taverns. And they were being cursed everywhere. It had to be said that the civil officials had been able to make their campaign work in a very effective manner. After all, they knew that the common people didn't know the truth. Thus, they had found it easy to instigate the masses. It went without saying that such a thing wasn't acceptable to anyone in this era. Consequently, those scholars were successful in changing the entire city into an ocean of abuse for Jun Moxie. They were sure that they would overwhelm him in a sea of clamor as long as he entered the Tianxiang city. The young master could turn a deaf ear to this abuse. However, could Guan Han do it as well? Could she endure such an embarrassing situation? However, they heard the latest astonishing news now. And it was like a bomb explosion to their ears, or maybe even like the incineration of a nuclear bomb. And so, it caused an even greater ruckus. Anyone who heard this news had the same reaction. They were stupefied and dumbstruck. In fact, it was like they had been struck by lightning. They simply couldn't believe it. Some groups of scholars and officials weren't ready to believe it. However, there were many who felt like they had picked a boulder and had dropped it on their own foot. Young Master Jun is so fierce. How can he be so fierce? A lone man fought 4 spirit Xian experts and won an overwhelming victory? Dang! Everyone knew what kind of people these spirit Xian experts were. So, everyone felt a slight chill in their hearts. How is one man who is able to fight 4 spirit Xians not be on the same level as the great masters? How could he not be unrivaled? Couldn't one say that the Jun family has become an existence that is on par with the Silver Blizzard City? Or maybe even higher, like an ultimate existence of some kind? Would I shame such a terrifying power? Do I not love my life? Then, someone suddenly stood up and clarified the facts. These were the same people who had spread the rumors yesterday. But they were the ones who were hurriedly standing up to clarify the facts today. However, who could control the effect of the rumors once they were out? It was like an old saying. It's much easier to put a dang on a river than to stop a person's mouth from flowing. And it was true. Moreover, this kind of a rumor made for a strong flavor in gossip. And such things spread as fast as lightning. Moreover, this wasn't merely a gossip or rumor. It was mostly true. It could be said that the people who had only imbibed scholarly text could only know the literary differences between civil and military matters. They could advocate the pros and cons of everything, and talk about things that were better. They could talk about the spirit Xian experts when it came to the topic. In fact, they could even talk of higher powers. However, these Xian experts were nothing more than a knight-errant to the eyes of these scholars. They believed that even the legendary warriors were subject to the law of the land. After all, there would be utter chaos if there weren't any laws. Therefore, these men didn't believe that there were people who could stand beyond the imperial power. and couldn't be constrained inside this world. Consequently, the notion of someone being above the imperial power after having attained a certain level of strength seemed even more absurd to them. After all, every piece of land and shore under the heaven belonged to the emperor. The news about Jun Moxie killing these spirit Xian experts reached the ears of Mei Xue Yan. However, the old man merely curled his lips and snorted as he said, "The crimes that he has committed haven't even been judged yet. And his case has also been smeared with murder now. This cruel, heartless, and pig-headed Jun Moxie should die to redeem for his sins. This world won't be peaceful until he dies." Case smeared with murder. This amazing and world-shaking event was a criminal case, in the words of that old man. However, the Tianxiang city was like a brick of night soil which was with scuttling maggots under the heavy rainfall. Everything was in utter chaos. Inside the royal palace, the emperor had been bitterly complaining to the empress and the princess when he received this letter. "You had said that this Jun Moxie would eventually calm down in time. However, he first made a huge mess in the capital. And then, he patted his buttocks and went off to the southern heaven city. And now, he has done such a filthy thing over there. However, this is a good thing. This would have merely been a matter for gossip if it had happened with someone else. But this has happened to Jun Moxie. And this has created a perfect opportunity to attack him. And don't forget how Jun Moxie had insulted those great scholars some time ago. Moreover, he had done so in front of the emperor, his relatives, and the court officials. Besides, that old man Jun also despises the government officials. Military and bureaucracy have always been at odds with each other. In fact, they probably will remain so forever. So, wouldn't those scholars take this chance to hit the Jun family when they're down? The emperor's face was riddled with grievances. In fact, it seemed that his resentments had arisen since his expectations hadn't been met. The empress's expression was extremely cold as she sat to the side. In fact, it seemed as if she hadn't even heard a single word. There was a chance that she may have heard some of it. However, she didn't have any expression belying it. However, the princess had a somewhat sad and worried expression on her face. In fact, she was looking anxiously at her father the emperor. These things had been happening every once in a while inside the palace these days. And the main reason for this was that the emperor wanted to use these opportunities as a pretext to try and talk to the empress. However, the thread of conversation had turned to Jun Moxie this time. However, the outcome was the same as the others. The empress would sit cold-faced. In fact, she would be as calm and quiet as an ice sculpture. And the emperor would eventually finish talking, sigh, and leave. The princess could remember her father pining after her mother like that since ever. In fact, the princess's heart felt a lot of pity for her father. After all, this had been the case for over 10 years now. How does he get by his day? After all, father is the ruler of an empire. However, he has been fawning in a low voice over his wife in this manner for 10 years. Doesn't this infatuation prove everything? However, my mother hasn't changed, even a bit. Why? Uncle Yi is pitiful. And father is also very pitiful. Princess Ling Meng's heart had deep sympathy for both these in-love men. She didn't know what she could do to make it well. Nor could she choose a side. How long had this been going on for? The emperor knew that it had been going on for a very long time. In fact, it had been so long that he had forgotten when it had started. But the empress still remembered it very clearly. The empress had treated her husband with the respect after their marriage ceremony. However, The birth of Princess Ling Meng had left the emperor beside himself with joy. Consequently, he had drunk himself well, and had said something which he should have never uttered in front of the empress. It was about the real reason behind the extermination of Yi Gu Han's family. This cold wall between husband and wife had been erected as a result. And it had continued to stand strong to this date. In fact, it hadn't even thawed ever since. And perhaps it would never thaw in the future either. This moment seemed no exception either. So, the emperor finished talking, and sighed as he looked at his wife's reactionless face. In any case, it would have been strange if she had reacted to his words of complaint. However, his efforts managed to exceed his expectations this time. And a strange thing happened. You needn't speak of how everyone in the city is gossiping about Jun Moxie. That matter is public knowledge. You were the one who sent him to the southern heaven city to die. And you're acting innocent now. Your revered majesty, why do you always use such methods? Can't you change your methods? The empress slowly spoke up. The emperor turned around like a whirlwind. What did you say? Do you know what you're talking about? Of course I know what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, can you not be so shameless? Don't you think that this will affect your image as the ruler of this nation? A real man acts courageously, and he takes responsibility. Do you think you can be considered a real man now? The empress spoke up in a slow and clear manner. The emperor was astonished by this. She would never say anything when I would talk to her in the past. However, this quiet woman has suddenly started to distort the right and wrong when I brought up Jun Moxie. In fact, she is even cursing me so bitterly. This is the first time this has happened in more than 10 years. Why? Why? She had been feeling guilty all those years, and she had wanted to redeem herself. She would dream of going back to the days of her youth. The empress had always acted in a dignified and graceful manner. She had never acted out in inflamed anger. In fact, she had never spoken so sharply even when she had been unhappy. This was the first time since that incident of the past that she had behaved like this. Princess Ling Meng's expression became one of fright as she looked at her father. Then, she looked towards her mother. She had long become accustomed to that cold wall between her parents. In fact, she couldn't even imagine witnessing anything beyond that between these two. Therefore, she was at a loss for a moment. I'm shameless? Why do you always say that I'm shameless? Why do you call me shameless? His Majesty spoke up in violent rage. I'm the emperor. I have to look out for the whole society. I have to give thought to everyone who lives in my lands. Where have I gone wrong? I have to look after millions of people. So, I have no luxury for words like a real man. Please subscribe to this channel so that we are more enthusiastic in providing the best video for you. Chapter 440. Jun family's influence. For the country. For the people in your land. That's a great argument. How pompous of you. Why don't you say you were thinking of yourself? It's all because of your selfishness. It's because you fear that someone will overthrow you. You're wary and jealous of everyone. You don't trust anyone, and you don't dare to have confidence in anyone. You lift a person high up yourself. And you knock them down into a bottomless abyss when they reach a high position and amass considerable power. You'll never be lenient with anyone. In fact, you'll use it to declare to your council of officials that there will be clouds if you turn your hand, and there will be rain when you remove it. You'll use that to show that you're omnipotent. Moreover, you will send this message to them with the help of these things: obey me and you'll flourish. Disobey me and you'll die. Do you genuinely think of yourself as someone very noble? No. You'll have them obey orders, right? In fact, they won't necessarily flourish if they obey you. But you'll surely have them killed if they don't. The Empress gave him a biting look. Her eyes were as icy as a mountain lake in winter. But you can't do anything about it anymore, can you? So, you can only get emotional about it now. This is rubbish. Yours are the eyes of a woman. What would you understand? The Emperor roared. He felt that his aloofness and pretense had no effect over his wife. So, the man couldn't control his anger. I'm talking rubbish? Am I wrong? You're telling me that I've accused you wrongly? So, let me ask you this. What was the cause of the Yi family's extermination? The Empress gave a tragic laugh. Then, she suddenly stood up and spoke. Who was behind the evils done to Jun Wu Hui? Who was behind Jun Wu Meng's murder? Jun Mo Yu and Jun Mo Cho were youngsters with unlimited prospects. What caused their premature deaths? What caused these young ones to be buried with so many troops? What left Jun Wu Yi crippled for 10 years? And why couldn't anyone even find Du Guxiong's corpse? These things. How much do you know? How many cases are you aware of? It seemed like a deeply concealed scar had suddenly been exposed. His Majesty felt enormous pain, like his lungs had been torn apart. Moreover, he had started to panic. In fact, his face had started to convulse. He had believed that the Empress had finally opened her golden mouth to argue. So, he thought that she'd argue the next day as well. And these instances would only increase in the future. Therefore, he believed that there was a chance that their relationship of a husband and wife could gradually become normal. However, he was unable to control his anger now. The Yi family, Jun Wu Hui, Jun Wu Meng, Du Guxiong, these names were like sharp needles pricking at his heart. And these needles had only left his heart to bleed in time. In fact, the pain had eventually reached his very bones. The Emperor would have dismissed anyone with a laugh if they had asked him these questions. Perhaps he would have admitted to the inconsequential things, and would have then covered his actions with weak excuses. But the one asking these questions was Murong Xiu. It was the person he cared for the most. The woman he loved the most. The woman he had yearned for, even in dreams. He had been dreaming about her ever since he had been a young man. He had been dreaming and hoping to get that woman even when he had become the prince. He was ready to incur any costs to obtain her. In fact, he would have stinted to institute the most disgraceful conspiracy for that woman. Then, she had eventually become his woman. He had spared no expense to obtain her. He had climbed to the emperor's position to obtain her. He had even deposed his previous empress to obtain her. And he had endured for 10 years to get her back. For her, everything had been for her. Things went further, and she finally became his empress and came to his palace. But his long-longed happiness lasted only for 2 short years. The people had remained the same, but the conditions had changed. The only thing which had remained was their status as husband and wife. However, they didn't have any personal connection between them. He had dreamt many dreams late at night. He had always felt extreme hatred in love. However, he had never hated her inconsistent love for him. Nor had he ever hated the fact that he wasn't able to get her heart. Instead, he hated the person who resided in her heart. Things would have been different if it weren't for him. Then, there was an assassination attempt on Princess Ling Meng, and Yi Guhan had suffered grave injuries. This had only increased the fissure between the two of them. Therefore, he had started to harbor even more hatred. He had then heard of the deformity that man had been rendered with. His right hand had been chopped off. Even his Xian strength had been annihilated. So, he would never be able to fight again. In fact, this condition was even worse than that of Jun Wuyi's. Ha ha ha. The emperor had felt a sense of tyrannical elation when he had heard that news. However, his expression had become somewhat twisted and convulsed at this moment. I don't know much. I don't need to know much. But I know one thing. And I already know enough. Isn't it enough? She looked at him coldly. You wouldn't have gotten emotional if something bad happened to the Murong family, even though they are the first family. But why have you forgotten yourself when there's a sudden rise in the Jun family's power? Why? Can you give me one reason? Reason? What reason? What reason would be there? How can a woman make absurd comments about major events that concern the nation? You have your own life. And you live a good and comfortable one. How many things have you been involved in? The emperor grumbled as he impatiently took large strides back and forth. What have I seen? Jun Wuyi's brothers were killed. And his body was destroyed. The Jun family continued to decline for 10 years. And they had no qualified successors. But you were very cheerful then, weren't you? After all, you didn't feel threatened anymore. Am I right? Your Majesty must have felt amazing when such great men were destroyed along with their might armies. After all, that must have been a handy deal. So, you must have felt great. The Empress sneered as saw the Emperor looking irascible in the face of her sarcastic remarks. She even felt a small sense of elation at this sight. In fact, it was the kind of elation one feels after they've given vent to their long-standing hatred. Consequently, her words had started to sound even sharper. What can you understand? What do you understand? What can you comprehend? The Emperor's face went dark, and his voice was astonishingly loud. His Majesty no longer had any misgivings about his daughter, who watched from the side as he glared in a malevolent manner. Do you realize how weak and unstable our position as royalty was at that time? Our position was jeopardized. The Tianxiang Empire was outwardly strong, but it was weak on the inside. Do you know how serious those conditions were? No. You don't know anything. He looked down his body and waved his hand energetically in resentment. He then thundered. You don't know. You've never known. You've only known how to criticize to no end, only to complain endlessly. You only have baseless suspicions. You don't know. You don't know anything. Do you know what cost I had to pay so that we could walk this day? I don't know much about these events. But I know one thing very clearly. The whole thing changed the moment Jun Wuhui took command and went into battle. The Yutang and the Shenxi Empire still don't dare to invade our boundaries. Isn't that because of the Jun family's contribution? Will you deny that as well? They were brimming with talented men, they wouldn't lose any battles, they had such divine capabilities. Yet, you had them killed. You used every possible means and methods. You used everything which you shouldn't have used. And employed every method you shouldn't have, to get them killed. But there's something that I've never understood. That is, how can you have such lack of foresight? Princess Ling Meng was shocked to hear this. And her entire body had been left to tremble. Her small hands had tightly covered her mouth. In fact, she was about let out a cry of alarm at one point, but she had somehow held it back. However, her eyes were filled with terror and despair. Father, don't tell me, you're right. Jun Moxie was indeed a divinely talented general of his generation. He made clever tactics and excellent strategies. And no man could contend with him. I've always admitted it. I've never denied it. Veins had pooped up on the emperor's face by now. He had a fanatic and fiery expression. The other two empires wouldn't dare to violate our borders because of Jun Moxie, his brothers, and Jun Xie. That's something I already know. Do you understand? I know all of that. I know it full well. I know it much better than you do. The emperor's voice was like a low thunder, while his expression was one of hysteria. Then, why did you do that if you knew everything? The empress stared intently. Don't tell me that you wish to rule a vanquished nation. Do you know the inside story? Did you know that only the army in the western part was under the donghua family's control? Moreover, that was the weakest one. However, Jun Moxie had 800,000 men under him. 800,000. Do you understand what 800,000 means? Do you understand? No, you don't. Jun Moxie had another 500,000. And Jun Moxie had 250,000. Moreover, Jun Xie supervised the entire military because he was the supreme commander. Do you know what that number entailed? And do you understand what that meant? The 4 Jun generals had over 1.5 million men under them put together. The entire empire's strength was at 2.6 million at that time. The donghua family had only 250,000 men, while the Murong family had 200,000. Then, there was the defense army, a motley crew, the forest rangers, and the guards. However, even these factions had people from the Jun family inside their ranks. Do you know what this meant? Do you understand? No, you still don't understand. I will tell you. His Majesty's eyes were bloodshot. He lowered his head and continued resolutely. This meant that we would have been helpless if the Jun family had decided to rebel. And that would have meant my head. My head. The emperor pointed to his head with his finger and roared. I've been under a sword since the beginning. And anyone could have taken my head with that sword if they wanted to. Do you understand? Could you have allowed such a family to exist if you were me? Disgraceful. But the Jun family never had any intention to rebel. I know this. And I'm sure that you know this as well. In fact, you always knew. The empress looked at him coldly. In fact, her biting cold glare had been following him as he was walking about. Tian Xiang would have been named for the Jun family if they had ever thought of rising in rebellion. And it remains the same today. Do you deny this? Can you deny this? But they are loyal. So, why don't you let them rest easy? Why do you insist on getting rid of them so quickly? Why do I wish to get rid of them so quickly? You've already spoken the most important reason. And I've acted for that alone. The emperor smiled in a cruel manner. Do you know what it is that you've said? Tian Xiang would have already been named for the Jun family if they had wanted to rebel. Is this not a good reason? Isn't it good enough? This story will be continued to chapter 441. For those of you who are not subscribed yet, please subscribe. The interesting and best stories will be updated. See you again in the next episode.